people cherish these connections or this capacity to feel, to be seen and to see others. And in its absence, especially when it's being kind of limited by technology, people really yearn for it and notice it. Will that be a moment where people go, no, actually humanity and connection is what is valuable here?
Hey everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of The Best of You. I'm so glad you're here today. We're talking about something that sits right at the intersection of spirituality, psychology, and everyday life, our work life. I like to think of it as vocation, that deep inner sense each of us carries that our presence in this world matters, that God in His tenderness and creativity crafted us not simply to do things, but to offer something uniquely ours to the people and places around us. And right now, with all of these new technologies, there's a lot of uncertainty in the workforce. A lot of people have been laid off. There's ways in which we're trying to figure out our relationship to work. Some of us are working from home. We're no longer going to offices. The truth is, nothing, not any of this chaos around us can replace the human sense of calling, the way we are designed to show up in meaningful ways, contributing to the world around us. When I use this word vocation, I'm not just talking about a job title or a resume line. I'm talking about that deeper sense of calling, the way your life becomes a channel of care, of creativity, of connection in the world. For some people, that calling shows up in a career. In my family, we have lots of different conversations about vocation. My daughter is interested in medicine, right? She's interested in what it means to use her gifts and her natural interests to comfort and to heal people who are sick. My son and husband are both in technology, right? Their minds light up around solving problems and building systems. And that's part of how they bring a contribution to the world around us. For me, my vocation has looked like sitting with people in their pain and helping people like you, my readers and my listeners, reconnect to themselves and to God through the work of psychology and faith and spiritual formation, right? All of these are jobs that pay the bills, and that's good. We need those things no matter what we're doing. One of my favorite jobs of all time was when I waited tables. I loved the work of waiting on people, not just because it was a job and a paycheck, but because it was caring for people, right? So these aren't just jobs. They're not just paychecks. They're a deeper sense of purpose, of vocation, of calling. This word vocation, again, is more than a job, a role, or a career path. Vocation is the deep inner sense of how your life is meant to contribute goodness to the world. It transcends job titles, whether you're raising kids, teaching, whether you're an accountant, whether you're working at the grocery store. It's your unique way of participating in God's ongoing work of creating, restoring, nurturing, building, comforting, and blessing. Vocation shows up in our gifts and our strengths, and it also shows up in our longings. It shows up in what energizes you about whatever the work is that you do in your given day. Not everything will energize you throughout your day, but some things will. That's part of your calling. It shows up in what you bring to others, what brings meaning, not just productivity. It shows up in the specific ways God made your presence life-giving, no matter what you're doing. It includes the work you're paid for and the work you offer simply because you're you, because you care, because you're creative, because your presence, your wisdom, your problem-solving, your compassion matters to this world. Vocation is how your life becomes a channel of God's creativity and love to this world. And it's rooted in our sense of self. Vocation is the imprint of God in you. Scripture says in Ephesians 2:10, we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. I love this word workmanship. It means we are God's art, crafted with intention, created to offer something from ourselves into the world around us. Woven into that design is our capacity for connection, for showing up in ways no one else can replicate. It's the way God's love flows through you. And And here's why this matters so much. When we lose connection within our sense of calling, we become burnt out. We fear loss. We start comparing ourselves to others. We lose that sense of belonging, that larger sense of our connectedness to the world around us. We can feel untethered, unmoored, like something inside of us isn't quite operating the way that we were intended to operate in this world. Vocation, calling, meaningful work isn't just what we do. It's part of who we are and who God made us to be, which is why today's conversation felt so important, and I was so grateful to have it. My guest, Dr. Allison Pugh, is a professor of sociology at Johns Hopkins University, and she has spent years studying the work that only humans can do, the work of attunement, of empathy, and connection. Her latest book is called The Last Human Job, the work of connecting in a disconnected world. It explores how we as humans are uniquely designed to carry this work of connection in ways that no technology can ever replace. Her research is rich, it's hopeful and illuminating, and it shows that no matter what you're doing throughout your day, whatever your work is, whatever pays the bills, whatever you've given yourself to, right, throughout the day-to-day course of your life, nothing can take away what you uniquely have to offer to your kids, to your family, to the community around you. And I cannot wait to share this conversation with you. Please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Allison Pugh. I'm just so grateful you're here. I really, this was such a fun episode to research and just came across your work kind of accidentally. And one of the things I just want to start off with that I really appreciated about your book, The Last Human Job, is that it's not just theory. You shadowed teachers, physicians, therapists, spiritual directors, veterinarians. A lot of therapists listen, people in ministry, spiritual directors. So lots of folks who I think can relate. Lots of people who are helping others, right? And you're trying to understand what connection really is. So before we kind of dive into the technology piece and all of it, what surprised you most as you spent time inside these professions about this idea of human attunement? You call it attunement. We talk about that a lot in the therapy world. I just thought it was so fascinating that you were looking at that outside of the therapy room and in these other realms. It really transcends so much of our work life.
It really does. I would say that there were a bunch of surprises, but one of them was how similar people sounded about their work across a lot of different occupations. And so the beginning part of this research was really like a journey of discovery where I was like, this sounds just like the doctors. This sounds just like the teachers. Like the similarities, I just kept being struck by the similarities again and again. And that's not, it's not that I didn't take seriously the very real differences between, say, a therapist and, a soccer coach, like there's a lot that's different.
Yes.
But the way they did their work, especially around the imperative of seeing the other and having the other person feel seen, that's shared across many very disparate occupations.
I just love that. I never thought about that, but it really is sort of the essential ingredient no matter what you're doing. I think about it when I'm getting my hair cut, right? The person, exactly. The artist who has a skill set I do not have, there's an attunement there. There's a relational quality there that transcends so many different types of occupations. You use this beautiful phrase, connective labor, to describe, again, this work that only humans can do. What do you mean by connective labor, and why is it so essential to our work life and really all of our lives, all of our interactions?
Yeah. So connective labor is just that, the labor of seeing the other and having the other person feel seen. Mm-hmm. And I'm someone who likes to put names on things, labels on things, because I think without that, we don't it's an attention drawing resource to give something a name. If we don't have a name for it, we don't know what we're protecting or worried about or what's being threatened or how, etc. So, and there's a lot of other words out there like emotional labor, affective labor, emotional, intelligence. But for a variety of reasons, I felt like none of those captured this exactly.
Interesting. And what do you mean? Like what, when you're naming it, I love that. You're putting a name on what you were seeing across all of these. Another similar word is attunement, but connective labor is a little different. So what is the essence of the quality that you're naming? What are we looking for? We know it when we see it or feel it, but what is it that you were observing? And
well, what I think is slightly different from attunement is it's a kind of, I would call it deep reciprocity. It's a mutual achievement. And I really want to call attention to that because emotional labor, emotional intelligence, etc., all those kind of live within the seer. And it's really vital to understand that seeing doesn't work if the other person doesn't feel seen. So it is a dance between two people or more. And that's vital for a lot of reasons. We'll talk later, I'm sure, about kind of automation and AI. And while AI can make people feel seen, because one side of it is a machine, you can never have that mutuality.
Right. So let's talk about that mutuality. So a teacher, a therapist, a spiritual director, a doctor. I'm intrigued by what you're saying because I think what you're saying is it's not just the person conveying information, it's the recipient receiving that so that it becomes both people are benefiting from that. Also the person presumably giving the information. Is that right?
Yeah, there's so much to say about what you just said. The first thing is I would distinguish really strongly. I draw a bright line between kind of just delivering information and connecting in this way. I think many engineers, administrators, people that don't quite understand this work think that the job of a physician or a teacher is just to deliver information. And I've actually spoken to, professionals or practitioners who can get frustrated, like, why don't these people just, get the information I'm trying to pass to them that I know from my years of training, etc. But more people that I spoke to, most of them understood that it's so much more than that. It's actually the relationship that makes that information come alive, that makes it stick, that makes it relevant and resonant, that it allows someone to hear you. So yeah, I wanted to make a big distinction between information delivery and the relationship.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about how even thinking about the physician, we go to our physician presumably to get help, to get a diagnosis, to get medicine, but really what's happening there is the relationship is forming. And I've heard you say something to the effect of, a physician may have some ideas about what I need to do to be healthier, but if they just give me the information.
I mean, some people will do it, in some circumstances you will do it, but often you need that connection. And then earlier you had mentioned that there are benefits and that the benefits go both ways. And that's the other thing that I want to kind of emphasize from what you said, that absolutely. And I feel like that was another, kind of surprising and to me very profound revelation, because we are used to, I think, talking about kind of the benefits of this work for the patient or for the student,
Yes.
Many physicians told me, for example, the relationship is what motivates the patient to take care of their health or whatever. So everyone's on board with motivation of the recipient, and that's the primary benefit of of this relationship. But actually, I did 5 years of research, all these interviews and observations, and I found that actually, when we talk about motivation for a patient or a client, there's also motivation, or what we would call purpose, for the worker, the practitioner, the teacher, the physician, the therapist. And you can actually kind of trace these kind of two-way benefits all the way through. So if you think that like being seen by a human being offers dignity, well, it also kind of generates dignity for the seer, what we might call humanity. They kind of got in touch with their inner humanity. So it kind of goes both ways, and we don't talk about that too much.
How did observing all of that shape your own professional mindset and understanding of your own work?
Yeah. So for me, my connective labor, I'm, as you can tell, I was like finding it everywhere. So all the different moments that I experience it, for sure in in-depth interviewing, which is the way I do my research. So that's a very fundamental, kind of moment of connective labor, but also teaching even in a college classroom. And then for sure my PhD advising with kind of graduate students. So that's a very intense one-on-one experience where I'm trying to kind of see their truth, to kind of elicit the research project that they want to do, that kind of thing. So it's changed, the research changed, made me more aware of probably what I knew already. I think the reason why I did this work is probably because I was seeing it in my own, kind of professional life already.
I could imagine, but it probably brought it to the surface, because I thought about that when I was
for sure
researching is, even the people with whom I work now, even, technically I have someone here to help me out with the technology. There's connection. It's not just, and this is kind of takes me to the next part of the conversation, because on some level, and I love how the book ends very hopefully, we're living in a world that is making it harder to do the human work, right? I mean, some folks might say we think about AI taking over jobs, we see layoffs, we see, and this way in which our work, whatever it may be, has been such a fundamental part of our sense of purpose and how we contribute to the world, and also how we connect with others. And I've been thinking about that because I am somebody who, and this isn't even about AI, this is just about the pandemic, kind of went from, working in an office to working mostly from home. And suddenly I find myself, like, my husband works from home, and suddenly we become a connection. It's a different layer to our relationship, even though we don't work in the same field. We're not in the same area, but we're suddenly each other's work colleagues.
Yeah.
So we're going to find connections somehow right now, or the folks who are helping me with the technology that now makes it possible. There's suddenly connective labor there, right? There's ways. So that's kind of the backdrop that I was thinking about as I thought to myself, no matter how much technology comes in, we're going to have to find this connective tissue. First of all, let's hit the bad news. How do you see the world making it harder for kind of this deeply human work where connection is sort of the primary facilitator? And then I want to get to, how can we continue to prioritize it regardless of what's happening in our technological landscape?
The bad news is we are, kind of making it harder, and there's many trends that are contributing to that. And actually, I think that AI is actually just, I would say, what do we call that? The leading edge of the spear or whatever.
Yeah.
It's actually just an extension of trends that have been going on for decades, where we kind of try and capture, I would say organizations or institutions are trying to capture connective labor to make it more predictable and reproducible and measurable. You can almost see their frustration about how out of control these, kind of interpersonal feelings are, and can't we just kind of get a handle on all that chaos? And so they've done a lot of scripting, and they've done a lot of data analytics, and which I end up calling counting. So they're like kind of dominated by, trends of scripting and counting. And that's been happening, spreading out from, say, teaching, which has experienced it for decades.
Yeah, where you're teaching to test, teaching to metrics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's like a kind of low-wage retail, like maybe hairdressing. They're, increasingly being asked to, finish up within 22 minutes.
Productivity.
One of my interviewees told me. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's actually spreading out into, kind of high-wage professionals, say physicians or, and therapists are interesting because they've really been able to hold off a lot of that. But I interviewed and observed therapists in, things like VA hospitals where they're really being corralled and managed into very tight time windows. And so that's very unlike the therapist who gets to kind of see people for as long as they want and don't take insurance. And so there's a very wide range of how much therapists are subject to this kind of efficiency imperative, but it's really spreading across the economy. And it's affecting, it's on some level quite antithetical to simply seeing somebody and establishing those connections in all their fullness.
Yeah.
And, you could say that AI is just the next step.
Yeah.
Like if we're already trying to kind of corral this, then like, why not make it more efficient? And why not, that kind of thing.
That's a really good point. You think about customer service over the last 20 years, where it's gone from someone really a thing, where you have an art to being service oriented. I picture my grandparents think, how they thought of customer service, right? To where, when I grew up, it's just, it doesn't feel human, even though it is. There's sort of a script and a many buttons you have to push till you even get to a human. To what you're saying, you're right. To now, almost maybe I should just talk to a robot because, it might be right.
What's
so that's
the
been
loss?
eroding
Right.
for a long time. I get what you're saying,
Yeah.
and that's a really good point. And so how do we? I guess there's a couple of questions. How do we hang on to ourselves through inevitable change? How do we not, I think there's that part of us that wants to just fight it, but it's coming. It's already here, to your point. To some degree, we've already been muddling through reduced connectivity. A lot of us, I think, go to the doctor and notice it. It's no longer a real conversation or relationship. It's sort of a bureaucratic list of questions, and nobody wants to step outside of the lines. And it's not, so how do we, I'm not sure what my question is, I guess, how do we remember our worth? Both, and I'm thinking both of the folks who are in the professions, right? Those of us who are noticing we're not able to do what we wish we could do, but also those of us on the other side of it, to your point. There's two sides of it. It's not good for either person involved. How do we, what do we do?
I mean, I completely agree. And I also don't think it's good for like our communities or our democracy. I think, being seen across these different, kind of spaces, being seen by your barista, being seen by your librarian, being seen by your hairdresser, like these are all different kind of moments of connection that matter.
Yes.
Yeah, especially like in a kind of cumulative way, for sure.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's vital. The only thing I would say about your kind of prefatory comments here, you made a comment about inevitable change, and that's where I'm going to push back, and that's where I find the light at the end of the tunnel. because it's not inevitable.
Interesting.
The inevitability of it is part of the hype machine that's coming out of, I don't know, those that are purveying industrial logic, but certainly the AI companies in Silicon Valley. But, I was glad to write chapter 8, which was all about places that are actually prioritizing connective labor right this second.
Yeah.
Like they're not needing a world revolution or, the US to grow a welfare state where it doesn't have one, Instead, it's like right this second, they have some unique constellation of circumstances that enable them to prioritize seeing and being seen. And that's, I think that's, of course, on the administrators, but it's also on workers those that have choices to make choices based on rewarding organizations that take it seriously, that take attention seriously. And then as consumers, as you said, we're, the patients, the clients, the students, and the consumers, we have some power also in kind of choosing those, kind of circumstances, factors, organizations, practitioners that make the space for this. And I think that will have an effect, that plus regulation and all sorts of advocacy on a kind of much bigger macro level.
Yeah, so I'd love what you're saying. It's not inevitable. We have choice both as workers and consumers. And I love that. I even as a consumer, I'm thinking about this customer service thing because I noticed in myself getting tremendously inhuman and heated when you're dealing with trying to call something like Verizon, right?
I mean, I had this experience very recently. I was like in the Hyatt, I think. I was in some mass chain asking for extended checkout, a late checkout. And they had a fake AI, like an AI, but one that they were disguising as a human. So she had, it was a she, and she had you could hear her breaths, and she had pauses and a kind of cute style. And I was like, oh my God. And she was like, so you want an express checkout? And I'm like, no, it was very frustrating.
So this is a very real example of hanging on to our humanity on the consumer side, because in the past I could say, let's say it's tense, this is a human at the very least, and I'll say I don't care if they're you're a human. I'm sorry, I got frustrated. This is hard. And you can find the human connection, no matter how much the institution or organization is trying to bury it. But in that situation, right? It's tricky. It's tricky.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about some examples that you found of where folks are fighting this.
Some of the examples, my favorite example was a clinic, which was a little crazy in how much it prioritized connective labor. So that instead of the 20 minutes for an appointment, people had essentially 2 hours for their first appointment. And I think maybe it went down to, I forget, an hour and 40 minutes or something for the second, like long time. And then they had the medical assistant who they had kind of amped up to a bigger job, go with patients, accompany patients to specialists. And it was just so profound. And I was talking to these medical assistants saying, like, I wish my parents had this. Everyone deserves this.
Yes.
And it was so inspiring. That's really great. I have to think that, I'll say this, maybe on my more pessimistic days, I think that is not possible on a wide scale, and instead I think much more likely is the kind of deployment that we're seeing now. So the example of the customer service bots or whatever is a great example where they are deploying AI to handle the easy cases, and then the complex cases go to a human being. And you and I and others know this, that like if you're like getting really frustrated, just go agent, 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 and it will take you to a human being.
Yes.
And that is one version
Yeah.
of the future that we are all getting.
It's something I think, again, both as participants, whatever, and then those of us, and my heart goes out to folks who, to your point, we want to try to continue to provide a connection and a care, but there are times when you can't, and you need the work. And if someone's telling you to read a script or keep it to 10 minutes, just trying to find your humanity within that is going to be...
I mean, that's really true. And I've talked to people whose jobs have been, I would call that corroded. Maybe other people might not agree, but like whose jobs have been organized in that fashion. To me, though, when I talk to people about what people got out of this job, they talked about how meaningful it was. And when they talked about it, when they were burnt out or drowning in it or overburdened or, needing the kind of escape that a 10-minute script would give them, it was more about how they were working for a place that didn't allow them the space to see someone else well. So I felt sympathy.
That's hard.
For them going, I'm burned out and I just need a break. And, a little AI would do me a great job, do me a great favor.
Sure.
But at the same time, I didn't want us to lose sight of the fact that if they were able to see the other and have the time to do that, they would not be screaming for AI to help them.
Yes, that's right. The burnout, because to your point, there's a dignity on the person who is doing the seeing. And when you deprive them of that, it's not good for them either.
Right.
And it leads to that burnout and that demoralization. So
I want us to kind of head back to the beginning and be like, let's solve that part instead of like saying, here, let's get you a scribe or whatever.
Yeah. Yes. Interesting. Well, so let's get to, so suddenly I felt a spark of hope. What is the hope in this? This is kind of what I'm wondering, if the human, our need for purpose, our desire for connection and creativity will begin to, I love what you just said. Oh, what I need to do is get back to the connection.
Yeah.
And we'll find ways to do that. What do you see as the hope based on your...
That is my hope. It's my... I also have a fairly gloomy version of it, but maybe I'll just take you down the really hopeful one first, which is it does feel like, people cherish this these connections or this capacity to be seen and to see others. They value it tremendously.
Yeah.
And in its absence, especially when it's being kind of transformed or limited by technology, people really yearn for it and notice it.
Yeah.
So that's suggestive that maybe there might be some pushback. There will definitely be a retrenchment at some point. We're not always going to be like kind of hurtling towards embracing AI in every single corner of our lives. It's just a little crazy moment that we're in right now. So there will be retrenchment. And my question is, in that retrenchment moment, if it comes in 2, 5, or 10 years, will that be a moment where people go, no, actually, humanity and connection is what is valuable here?
Yes.
I mean, I hope that that's true. I know people feel that way. The question is whether they will be able to express it and find it.
Yeah. Yeah, listening to you reading the book, that was my big takeaway. Is I want to be someone, whatever I'm doing, that's trying to bring that in somehow.
And you do. This is doing that.
Well, I mean, we're in a screen, we're not in person, but I want, I really, that's one thing I've really gotten from your work is this is the irreplaceable thing, is the connection between us.
Yes, exactly right.
You can't replace it. And it means something and it matters. We have to figure that out. Whatever, that's the thing we can hang on to. Whatever's happening around, we can't control Amazon. We can't control, the powers that be. We can't control everything. But we can control the moment we're in to some degree. Yeah. And until, as you're saying, I love what you're saying, the dust will settle somewhere.
It will. I mean, I have to say that part of the fight here is a fight about evidence, because you can't really count this work very well.
Yeah.
It's a very qualitative kind of experience.
Yeah.
And that kind of evidence is sometimes kind of disparaged as, just testimonials, or, just stories. And people, even kind of policymakers, know that stories drive, emotion, but they really rely on, randomized controlled trials and statistical evidence to kind of make policy. So this is really at its core, we have to be able to rally the troops, the connective labor troops, around asserting the importance of this kind of evidence also. Yes. And that's why I wanted this to be about maybe alternative means of moving needles, like using art and using poetry and using novels and using, just trying to kind of touch people in their hearts where they might be able to hear these profundities that we all experience.
And we just know. I love what you're saying. And here you are at the middle of Johns Hopkins, which is a very research, scientifically driven institution. I mean, of all of them, it's probably the most in some ways.
Yeah.
Waving your flag for connective labor. And I love it. Yeah. I think it's beautiful. I love what you're doing. I want to encourage you. I came, we were in Boston just personally, we were in Boston, and then the pandemic allowed us to spend more time I grew up in a little town in Wyoming, and it's allowed us to be here more because honestly, there's more we can do remotely. But I will say, being in a smaller rural area and outside of sort of an academic world, the things you're talking about are everywhere. Everywhere. And those connections, and it's almost like it's such a healthy, like my dignity in pouring this cup of coffee for someone is so profound because I'm seeing them every day, and I'm just like, that is it doesn't matter what my work is. And I've caught a little bit more of it, and I see you doing such a beautiful job of, through research, through trying to gather the evidence, through talking to people, kind of wave that flag for this connective labor that brings us meaning in life and in our work, and no matter what we're doing. So I just want to encourage you. I just thought it was beautiful, and grateful that you are part of bringing the evidence, right? Bringing the data to say, no, this is it. Well,
thank you. Thank you so much. And I love hearing that about where you are, because I don't spend that much time in more rural places. And so that's really terrific to hear. You hear so much about kind of a, alienation or loneliness. And of course you hear that about urban environments, but you also hear it about, rurality. So it's just really nice to hear that you're seeing a lot of connection there.
Yeah, it's a very that would be as a sociologist, I would love for your analysis, because I'm just speaking purely anecdotally, but there is a quantifiable difference. Just one little example, when we were gone for a long time in the suburbs of Boston, and then we went back during the pandemic, and people didn't know that we were gone.
Oh no, really?
Now, that might say something about us, but it's a bedroom community. Folks live there and don't work there, right? that wouldn't happen. It's almost like, gosh, I wish I was a little more anonymous. People notice when I'm not around. But it just anecdotally and sociologically, I love your, that lens. It's like something is going on here that amidst the backdrop of this technology conversation is interesting in how we're going to move forward as a people who need to be connected to one another.
Yes, exactly. And what you're describing is so interesting because of the drawback or the costs of privacy, and like people want privacy, but also it makes us into these little islands. And part of what's so important is to bridge those islands.
Yes.
And to do so requires a little oomph to get over the inertia, and some of that oomph is already provided in places where, you see each other every day. And
I have hope based on that, because I just think, people, we will figure this out. But tell my listeners, I could keep going just back and forth, because I just think it's such an interesting. Tell my listeners where they can find your book. We'll link to it, but just give us the name of it and a little bit of what you hope folks will come away from as they read it. It's such a beautiful piece of work.
Oh, thank you. So you can get The Last Human Job at, for sure, at Princeton University Press. You can get it in Amazon or wherever you buy your books. It's still, I think, pretty widely out there. And what do I hope people get from it? I wrote this book to kind of highlight the profound and vital work that people do to connect to the other. And I felt like that work was invisible, kind of taken for granted, assumed if you were a woman, ignored if you were a man. And I wanted us to kind of put it under a microscope and look at what makes it, like what enables it, and what makes it more difficult to do, and also the threats that were posed by automation and AI. So I was kind of, one of my reviewers called it a love letter to connecting, and that is true.
I love it.
It is definitely a love letter to connecting.
I love it.
But it's also about, this is something we need to preserve and protect against these kind of urgent threats.
I love it. Thank you. Thanks for just sharing your wisdom, and thanks for just shining that light. I think it's beautiful and important, and I'm grateful to have you here today.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of The Best of You. It would mean so much if you take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to or watch podcasts and click the plus or follow button. That'll ensure you don't miss an episode, and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you leave a 5-star review. And be sure to join us each weekday for The Best of You Every Day, a brief daily reflection to help you start your mornings with a steady dose of wisdom. Remember, as you become the best of who you are, you honor God, you heal others, and you stay true to your God-given self.